I am a student of history. If you go back through my records, basically when I went to university, that was what I majored in. And so the way in which we behave socially and how that continues to evolve along with our technology was an interest that I particularly had while studying it. And I couldn't help but notice, couldn't help but have the thought the other day that Twitter is, in a great sense, much like our modern Colosseum. Now, not with so much always direct bloodbath like you would have back in the spectacle of the Colosseum, but there are some incredible parallels. Um, I was thinking about that I wanted to balance this conversation with the idea that it's not all to say that it's negative, because often when we think of the Colosseum, we think of, well, Dan Carlin does like great reporting on this. He's an incredible, not historian, but a lover of history, and he does these great podcasts about the fall of the Roman Empire, about the Middle East, about the Second World War and Japan's involvement with it. I believe it's Supernova in the East or something like that. Really, really fascinating stuff. And you learn from him that the degree of bloodshed in the Colosseum was insane, like loosing like 300 tigers against 300 bears or something like that. We're talking crazy, crazy levels of spectacle and blood, and people would go there to be lost, to have an experience, to become, I believe, almost actively desiring to become a part of a mob mentality, which is very much what I'd want to talk about here in regards to Twitter in the modern context. But first, with a little more balancing of how I would acknowledge at the same time that there are great things that can come out of Twitter in its current form. That, for example, I love movies. I like Zack Snyder movies. I really, really like, and I think it was completely underrated, was The Watchmen. I read the graphic novel, and I think he did something incredible there with the adaptation to the live-action version of it. But specifically as that relates to Twitter and this sort of, what would you call this, court of public opinion and the sway that it now has, Zack Snyder was making the Justice League, and then for tragedy within his family, he had to discontinue his working on it, and it was taken over by Josh Whedon. But then, because of this upswell in a desire to see the Snyder Cut that I believe originated in Twitter, that then finally came to fruition. So much as I agree with Dave Chappelle when he says that Twitter is not a real place, I think we would be naive not to acknowledge the influence that it can often have, going so far as to impact a multi-million-dollar project finally reaching completion where it would not have otherwise. Where I think, though, that there is this negative parallel to the Colosseum is what I mentioned just a moment ago, which is that people would go there specifically to become lost, specifically to become a part of a collective emotive consciousness. That's to say that you would get caught up in the bloodshed that you were seeing in front of you, and you're no longer so much thinking, not thinking rationally so much as you are thinking emotionally and enjoying that. Just as you would when you watch an action movie, you get really excited, you get really into it. You're not caring so much about the fact that, oh, the hero on the screen at this point is a mass murderer. He's killed hundreds of people single-handedly, but I know that it makes me feel good, and that's what I'm going to enjoy and ignore the rest of the nuance that might go along with that. Well, that is what I see as a kind of reality and expression of what modern Twitter is, where people go into this Colosseum, and this Colosseum now grown to include any member of human society that has a internet connection and is now able to participate in endless, nonstop, everything, all the time spectacle, and where we have so many things in our day-to-day lives that may be impacting the way in which we're thinking or making choices. We don't realize that when we go into a place like Twitter and we see something that is irritating us. If we took a moment to stop and think, more because we've had a horrible day and we'd recognize that us hurling our vitriol into the void has no other effect, but it's kind of an emotional acid bath of relief for us to say something there that might be hurtful, might attack someone, and because of our handles that we can do so anonymously. So it's like you get this great emotional release, you get a great affirmation of your opinion, and there is apparently to you no consequence, because if you've done so anonymously, then you're not going to really hear back from it. Nobody's going to dox you or whatever, and you're going to have your personal information released. But then in this new gladiators arena, people are being walked over and they're being slaughtered in the millions. They're being, whatever you want to call it, canceled or whatever else. The other issue that I take with it is that you have in this Colosseum nowadays, you have people who are claiming the standard of whichever group it is that they're going to speak about, but whatever gave them the right to say that I am the standard bearer of the opinion of this whole group? And you can see that if you get caught up in that, and if you're really emotional and you're really excited, you'll just jump on board as soon as you see something that affirms what it is that you feel, as opposed to thinking, is this person beyond this opinion that I might share actually even aligned to the same goal that I have? And now, without any sort of reflection on the person behind the words, you've aligned yourself with somebody who, if you dug perhaps a little bit deeper, you might find you have absolutely nothing in common with. Now everybody's given an opinion, and opinions and ideas, once seeded, can then grow, and they can run out of control where it gets to a point that you don't even know anything other than that you wanted to make some kind of criticism and it felt great, and because you were limited in these number of characters that you have to express your point, it's quite literally designed to remove nuance, because you can't have a conversation. And we all know what it's like communicating in text with each other, where you can misconstrue even like the simplest message that you may have from a friend and not realize that they've misunderstood you on the other end, because so much of what is carried in our communication is conveyed through tone rather than the literal words that we're communicating with. So the chance and opportunity to be misunderstood, the chance to be whipped into an emotional frenzy, the chance to jump onto some tyranny of the mob, some tyranny of the majority, because it feels good but isn't accurate, is so seductive in the platform, and just as seductive, I think, in the way that the Colosseum was this place where within minutes you're seeing so much violence that you were so excited, you've abdicated any sort of interest you had in rational thought and have hijacked your synapses to the emotional bath that you're now taking in this thing that just makes you feel good regardless of the moral implications of it. And I suppose bloodbath can be pretty accurate, because it is a metaphorical bloodbath for what it can do for some people's careers. And it is a collective opinion, and it is a collective opinion that is beholden to nothing other than sort of the emotional sways, kind of like a tide, as opposed to objective thought. And this is what I was thinking. It's an interesting idea. Is this an answer or a solution to Twitter and this sort of like rage that you find there? No, but maybe most importantly of all, it's an appeal to think about when we use these kind of systems as they evolve, that the idea that is so confusing, and I think where most people are having trouble with integrating with reconciling their use of it in a healthy way, is that we often equate ease of use with low impact. So we think that if something's easy to do, well, like, how impactful could it be? You turn on a light, it's so easy that it can't really be a significant event. But of course, this isn't the case when we go onto these SNS platforms, and they trick us in that way, because we think, oh, it's just one message. I don't realize that now 1 million messages have been sent to a person in that same way. It was just writing 30 characters. How much can 30 characters do? But we don't see the exponential impact of now billions of those characters in a collective force set to task on someone. We don't realize that even though something is simple to use, that it can have a massive, massive, massive impact. And I'm just adding to a choir of voices saying that it's probably really, really important that we examine our usage of these things, and that we should not frivolously participate in them. Twitter's a hell of a drug. maybe that could have been the tagline for the video. But I wanted to do some more reflections like this, and create a conversation around things like this. And that's what it is. It's a conversation. I more have an idea and a thought less than I do a conclusion, because I think sometimes the question is more important than exactly what the answer is, because it leads to further dialogue, it leads to further thought, and it leads to personal reflection, which is maybe the most useful thing of all, because it reveals in ourselves the blind spots in our behavior that we are not so aware of. This is fun. I hope you're doing well out there. For those who support me on Patreon, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Fresh podcast up very recently on the Interstice podcast channel. I've likely put down my Instagram if you'd like to follow me there for all the images taken around Japan, the stuff I'm doing there, and as well my website, where I'll be launching new merchandise soon, and as well that I do my blog. So thank you so much. I hope you're happy. I hope you're safe. I hope you're healthy. Hug the ones you love. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.